This podcast is sponsored by Path to Publishing, helping authors to take control over their publishing journey for over 21 years. Visit pathtopublishing.com to get on the path to publishing your next book.
Welcome, everybody, to It's Truly Novel. This is your hostess, Brandy M. Miller, and I am here with Amy Ferris, and today we're going to talk about what's new with Amy, because this is the podcast where we talk about everything new on the internet. So welcome, Amy. How are you today?
I am very well. Thank you for having me.
It's awesome to have you here. So tell me, what is new with you?
Oh, there's a lot new.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, there's a lot new. So I'm the director of the Story Summit Writer School.
Ooh.
And that's pretty amazing. And I'm working with Deborah Engel and David Kirkpatrick and a few other really amazing folks. And we have created this online school because of the pandemic.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about this Story Summit Writing School.
I will tell you a little bit. It was founded by David Kirkpatrick, who was the head of production at Paramount Studio, and where he how would you say that? Shepherded? I don't know if that's the word, but he had been the head of production and had all of these extraordinary films made under him and under his time there. And a couple of years ago, he had this, it was called Story Summit. And it was, an in-person retreat conference. Mm. And then when the pandemic hit and COVID, he and a few other people decided that it would be really wonderful to create something that would be online for a community of writers to be mentored. And so the Story Summit Writers School was born. And Deborah Engel and I were the co-directors. And now I'm the director of the Story Summit Writers School, and she's the executive director of Story Summit Writers School. And it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. We are doing a year of memoir. So every Monday, there are probably 50 students. And every Monday night we meet, and we'll be meeting through up until January. And we have classes that are, Deb and I do, We See You, We Hear You for women only. And we get together once a month, and we do all kinds of extraordinary classes that are either film related or publishing related. And it's remarkable. We went from having 12 people a year and a half ago or 2 years ago to having over 1,400.
Very nice. It sounds wonderful.
It's extraordinary. Yeah.
And so tell me, is this how much does it cost per month to join this school, or is it per class?
It's per class, and some of the classes are free, like We See You, We Hear You. We do that as an offering. And so that's for free. David Kirkpatrick just started for all men, Braveheart. And so once a month, men will get together on a Sunday, and that's free. And then we have, classes that are per class. The cost is per class. We also, in December, we're doing an in-person retreat for women, and it's called Her Spirit, and it's in Santa Fe, and it's from December 4th to the 8th. And it's called Her Spirit. And it's remarkable. We have some amazing faculty. Marta Kaufman, who created Friends and Grace and Frankie, she's going to do the keynote. And Jocelyn Jones, and oh my God, just so many incredible, really, Julie Barton, Julie Cantrell. It's incredible what we put together.
That sounds amazing. So it focuses on both screenwriting and publishing. Is that my understanding?
Yes. It's both it's both screenwriting and publishing. And it's also, we have one class that we're going to be doing in the fall, From the Page to the Screen. And it's going to be about, we're going to take, I don't know how many students, but they will write a short story or take a short story, then develop that into a short screenplay. And then we will have the production, and by the end of however many weeks, 10 or 12 weeks, they will have a short film.
Oh, nice. That
It's
sounds
great.
like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And we're also going to be in Kauai in November. We've partnered with the Kauai Writers Conference. And so it's Hollywood comes to Kauai. So if anybody wants to be in Kauai for 10 days, this is the place to be.
No doubt. I mean, good weather, perfect
Yes, and
balmy.
Brooke Warner will be there. Brooke Warner will be there, and
Mm.
Andrew Ross and Marta Kaufman and David Kirkpatrick. Deborah Engel is going to be there. I'm going to be there. Linda Schreier. It's really, and we're going to be doing a lot of, and Dale Launer, who wrote My Cousin Vinny,
Oh, nice.
and Jeff Farch, who wrote Sleepless in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it's going to be remarkable. And that's in November.
Wow, that's not that far away.
No,
But-
no, it isn't.
But you still have time to save those pennies up. I'm sure. How much is that retreat going to cost people if they wanted to sign up?
I'm really not sure. I think
Okay.
if they stay at the hotel, I mean, I think there's an all-inclusive deal
Okay.
for that. And there's also, you can come for the workshop itself, which is, I think, 3 or 4 days. And that's at the very beginning of Kauai. And I'm pretty sure those workshops are about $600 for the 4 days, something
Yeah.
like that.
So it's pretty reasonable.
Oh, it's amazingly reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kauai, and yeah. And, then if you stay for the panels and all of that, it's pretty remarkable. You have the option to either come for 4 days or 5 days for the actual writing conference. And then there's a couple of days where it's, panels and, in conversations and stuff and luau's and all kinds of good stuff.
Well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but almost the most important part of it isn't even the instruction, but the people you meet.
Absolutely.
How much does that play a role in somebody who's starting out, getting into the industry, making those connections?
Huge. It's massive.
Yeah.
It's really massive. Everything is about relationships. If people, if you meet someone at a conference and they're the head of production or they're a publisher or an agent and they like you, and then what ends up really happening is they want to foster that relationship. They want to mentor you. And, so it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing when something like that happens.
Yeah, I think that's an often underplayed, underestimated aspect of business. But I was reading early in my entrepreneurship career, I read a book by Michael Port called Book Yourself Solid. And one of the things he said stuck with me is that every business problem is a relationship problem in disguise.
Woo!
If your business isn't doing well, it's because you have a problem with relationships.
Oh my God, that's stunning.
It was very eye-opening
so
for me.
true.
I didn't grow up in a home where healthy relationships were formed. So I had no clue. I really had to go back and construct relationship education for myself. I had to figure out what does a healthy relationship look like? What is that supposed to be like? And I'm still working on my relationship skills.
That's a very profound thing to say. And it's very true. Everything is relationships, everything. I mean, that's really the bottom line. And I think we don't see that. I think that's a real enlightening and an awakening experience to realize that it's not a business, it's a relationship.
Yeah, it was. And later in my development, in 2014, I published The Poverty Diaries, which was a collection of my diaries going through poverty, some of the harder moments, so that people could kind of get an inside glimpse. I didn't have 15 baby mamas or baby daddies, I wasn't your stereotypical. I was well read. It wasn't a case, and I couldn't figure out what was keeping me in this poverty. So I kind of put it out there to give people a glimpse on the inside looking out, what it was my everyday life like, so they could kind of see what the thought process is. Because I couldn't see at the time what was happening. And then I kind of slowly, as my entrepreneurship journey went on, realized what was happening was that part of the problem was that I was so busy, so invested in my own dreams, I couldn't prioritize the dreams of the person I was trying to do business with. And nobody wants to be used, right? If they're just a stepping stone to getting where you want to go, that's going to automatically put them off. And the only people that will do business with you are other users. And you're never going to get the kind of business transaction that you really want, because you're both just looking to use each other to get where you want to go.
That is really profound.
And that shift from realizing that what I actually needed to do in order to succeed was to put my own dreams to death and to prioritize their dreams. Their dreams had to be my focus. Making sure they got where they wanted to go had to become my focus. Because if it wasn't, neither of us would succeed.
Right.
And so it became a total shift of my attention and my focus and my drive. It was no longer about the bottom line. It was about how far can I help them go. And then my reputation started to spread because the attitude was different.
Yes. That is fascinating.
Yeah.
It is.
So I'm not saying that I'm a millionaire, but that hasn't been my focus either.
Right.
The money stopped being my focus. The focus started being, how much can I help other people? How can I help them get where they want to go?
Yes. And that's something that I think we all should be focusing on. How can we lift and champion and help other people, other women? How can we do that? How can we raise up rather than, really, it's so important. It is so important. And I think that that's one of the things that is so remarkable about the Story Summit Writers School, or Story Summit in total, is that it's about lifting and championing and raising other people.
And making a way for their voices to be heard.
And making a huge way for their voices to be heard. And so many of the students are getting published and getting movies made now and getting seen in a way that they never would have if there hadn't been the opportunity to do an online class or online school. Because it's really hard to get an agent to pay attention. Yeah. It's really hard to knock on the door of a, powerful producer. And those are the folks that we're bringing on board, or right. Publishers and the agents and the producers and we're bringing the heads of studios on board. That's what's so incredible, is that the students are able to have a conversation with someone like Marta Kaufman. Yeah. Or have a conversation with someone like Jocelyn Jones, or, it's really extraordinary. And the other thing too is, we always think, oh, they don't have time, or they don't, or, oh my God, they're so busy, or they're so important. Well, I've learned in the last 2 years how something like this is invaluable to them. Because they're seen as human beings.
Yes.
They're seen as human beings. They're seen not as, the guy who runs the studio, but he's being seen as a guy who's struggling through the pandemic, who's, trying to figure out, how am I going to create something out of all of this now? And it's really wonderful. It's a community, and there's a sense of collaboration.
Yeah.
And that's really incredible.
I think that was one of the most eye-opening things for me. The first year I was in business, I did a lot of ghostwriting for people who are multimillionaires, right? And for somebody who's in poverty, usually like, there would be no way for me to get into that space to have these conversations with them. But I was helping them share their story. So they were willing to be open with me. And it wasn't a situation where I was judging them and they weren't afraid of me judging them. So they could be as open and honest as a person can be. And what I realized is for listening to these stories is that in a sense, most of them got rich because they were hoping that the money would cure the insecurities. Like the
Ooh,
money would be a fix
yeah.
for the fears, for the insecurities, for the doubts, for the all that. And when they pursued the business, they didn't care what business it was at first, right? It was just whatever's going to bring me money, that's what I'm going to do. And so they did a whole lot of that, and they got the money at the cost of relationships, at the cost of personal relationships, right? They put husband and wife and children to the side and just focused narrowly on the business and doing everything they could, hoping that, thinking that they were doing it for those people. And they get to the top. The people that they put on the side are no longer there because, remarkably enough, people cannot be put on shelves. They walk away. They have this tendency to walk away and find somebody else who will pay attention to them.
Exactly.
And so then they're at the top. They've got all the money. They've got all the house, the car, the dream. Everybody's looking at them like they've got the dream lifestyle. But the people that surround them only care, they don't know why they're there anymore because the people that were with them at the beginning have gone.
Right.
And these new people, they have to ask themselves, would these people even be here if not for the money? So instead of decreasing the insecurities, it sort of amplifies them.
It does. That's a very true way of looking at it. Yes.
And so the money becomes this isolating factor. And many of them became suicidal or severely depressed because it was like, is this all there is to life? I've put all my life into this. I've invested everything into getting here. Is this all there is to it?
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking for me, but also I think God had allowed me to see this so that I could understand why he hadn't let me charge forward the way I had originally planned, because I could have been in their shoes. So he's like, no, I want you to slow down and take a look at this. The money that you're after is not going to solve all the problems you think it will. It's not going to do what you think it will do. In fact, it can become kind of a cage, if you will, because you become afraid of letting go of what you've built.
That's very true. That is very
step
true.
away, even though it may be killing you, even though you may hate the business you're in now, right? And you're afraid to walk away from it because you're afraid of who people will see you as, or what they will think, or if you'll lose everybody and everything. But it's only after they lost everything and had to rebuild that they were able to invest themselves in a passion that they loved, and that they brought them joy doing. And so then they could take all those business skills they learned and apply it to the joy project. And so this time around, because they were focused on passion and not on the money, they were finding more joy in what they were doing.
Well, that is about as much truth as I've heard in a really long time. That's very, and that's it right there. I think that's the thing that most people need to hear all the time. Follow your passion.
Yeah.
What is it that you want? Why, it's kind of like right before I met my husband, right? Somebody, and I had dated all these bad guys and weird guys. And, and my friend said to me, don't you want a man in your life who makes you happy? And the whole idea of someone making me happy was foreign to me. It was, I had to make someone happy. I was brought up in a house where I had to make my mother happy. And if I didn't make her happy, she didn't love me.
Yeah. No, see, I understand what you're talking about, because my mother was a deeply unhappy woman. And so she was looking to everybody else around her to find the happiness she didn't know how to build in herself.
Yes. And so, you know, that kind of that, when you know that as love, that's what you bring into your life, because it's you're setting yourself up, right?
Yeah.
So I was always looking to make the guy happy. Never did it dawn on me that a guy should make me happy. And then when my friend Ted said to me, you know, don't you want a guy who, you know, makes you happy? It was as if the light went on. I mean, really, truly, it was like such an aha moment. And I thought, make me happy. Wow. And I understood the dynamic. I understood, you know, completely about the habit that I had and how I was bringing into my life the men and, you know, and friends too, you know, that
Right.
I knew I needed to make them, I had to please them.
Right.
And so to switch that, everything changed. It was like literally the entire world flipped over.
Yeah.
And I met my husband 2 weeks later. And the first thing I thought of after our date was, man, he made me happy. I mean, it was like he was making me happy. And it was such a revelation, because when you, like women like us who are brought up in a family where we had to please or make someone else happy, that's how we viewed what love was. It's giving something away. It's, what can I give you so you can love me? What can I give you so you can see me?
Right. What do I have to do to
What do
please
I
you
have to do to
so
please
that you will find me pleasing and you will want me?
And you know what happens in stuff like with relationships like that? They all leave eventually.
Oh yeah.
Because you can't maintain that kind of generosity, you know, or faux generosity, as my friend Alexia would say, and maintain that. It's
exhausting. It's exhausting.
It's depleting.
Well, I was 27 when I realized that I had twisted myself into so many pretzels, trying to please everybody around me, trying to be what I thought they needed me to be, that I was losing track of who I really was.
Yes.
And that I needed to figure out who that person was and what she wanted and take a stand for her, or I was going to lose myself entirely. And I could not handle that thought. Like, there had to be a way to recover me. And I did have to fight. Some of the people I loved the most deeply were, of course, not too pleased with my transition.
Imagine that.
Yeah. They had, well, in a sense, I had been lying to them without intending to lie, because I was being somebody I wasn't. So I was really, it really came down to me having covered over who I was in this effort to please, like walking around with masks on, right? Yeah. And you wear a different mask for each person you meet based on what you think they're going to accept and what you think they'll find pleasing. It took me a very long time to realize that you cannot possibly be loved for who you are, where you are, exactly as you are, until you have the courage to admit to who you are, where you are, exactly as you are. If you don't ever have the courage to take those masks off, you will never, ever be loved, because nobody will ever be able to see who you are long enough to love you. That
is absolutely it. Bingo.
We are so inundated in this society with the idea that we need to look a certain way, wear certain clothes, behave a certain way, act a certain way in order to be loved. And the reality is that those things that we put on, those masks and those pretend auras of who we are actually the very thing that keep us from being loved.
It's very true. It's like a barricade. It's like, you know, that's what we do. We put up these walls. You know, we're afraid of being found out.
Yeah.
We're afraid that if people know who we really are, they're not going to like us or want us or be with us. And the truth is that, and it's what you just said, once we let go of all of that, once we kind of just take off all of the armor and, you know, the scaffolding, once we take all of that down then we not only love ourselves more, we won't let anybody in who's going to hurt us or deplete us or demean us. We're going to be really aware of that, you know, because we've already experienced doing that to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think the other side of it is that once we become okay with and able to love that person on the inside,
Yeah,
then in a sense, we recognize that if somebody isn't okay with this portion of me, like isn't okay with me and all my unvarnished glory, right? Um, you know, it's not because of me, it's because they're not okay with what they see in me that looks like them.
exactly. It's a mirror.
Yeah, well, we're all mirrors for each other.
Yes,
What we don't like about somebody else is what we see in them that we don't like about ourselves.
exactly. That we're afraid of, or that is absolutely, without a doubt.
And the thing is, I say, is that, you know, if you look in the mirror and you happen to notice that you're 120 pounds overweight, do you get mad at the mirror for telling you the truth about where you're at? Or do you say to yourself, I don't like being 120 pounds overweight. Maybe I need to do something about it. If I
That's very,
don't like what I see in somebody else, it's not my job to change them.
it's your
It's my
job.
job to ask myself, what is it I need to change about me?
Right.
What is this person teaching me about what's on the inside of me that needs to be shifted and changed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And some people around us are warning signs. Like maybe we're not that person, but we could become that person. So we kind of need to ask ourselves, is that who I want to be?
You know, the other thing too is we also have to be honest about whether we like someone or don't,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a tough one too. It's like, you know, not do they like me, but do I like them?
Mm.
And that's a very important question for all of us to ask. You know, do we like that person? Do we want that person in our life? You know, I know because of my own history, it's always been, do they like me? But over the years and polishing my own self and really looking at my own life, the question is, do I like them? And that's also something we don't ask ourselves. We're so many of us are so hungry to be seen and loved and wanted. And yet, yes, we do. We we turn ourselves into all sorts of pretzels and go through so many hoops. And wouldn't it be incredible if we just all could just accept who we are in the world?
It would be incredible.
And
But I will say it takes courage to do that.
It takes a massive courage.
And I think that's why a school like yours, where you're teaching people to write, because until you're willing to put aside those, I say that the best advice I could give somebody who wants to know what to do in order to write well is write naked. Okay, maybe not physically naked unless that just happens to be your thing. But take off those masks and remove those inhibitions and set aside all those things that you think you have to be and all those things that you put on yourself because you think that's what other people expect. Strip all that off. Get rid of it. It's garbage.
Absolutely.
Rip your heart out and bleed on the page. You know?
And that's exactly what I always say. Bleed on the page. And, you know, release it from your body.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the other thing too is we're so hooked into whether or not we're going to get published or not published, or if we're, you know, our words, that isn't the point of what writing is. It's actually digging deep. It's excavating.
It's self-discovery in a sense.
And, you know, that page is your best friend.
Yeah.
It's like when we were kids and we wrote in diaries. That diary had a key. You know, my diary, my little pink diary had a key, and I knew where the key was, and nobody else could open that diary. And if I wanted to write, I'm going to marry Richard Polito when I was 8 years old, and Richard Polito was the cutest boy in the neighborhood, you know, nobody knew that. if I wanted black Mary Janes and my mama wouldn't get them for me because kids would look up my underwear, that was always, no, you can't get patent leathers, because they'll be able
The
to
shiny surface, right?
they'll be able to see your panties. It's like, oh, please, Mom, give me a break, get me the Mary Janes. But that's the thing about writing is if we are brave enough to expose ourselves on that page, knowing that nobody has to read it, once we get it out of our body, once we open the vein and bleed, once we do that, there's something so unbelievably miraculous about it.
But I think even if you never publish it, right, you have changed yourself. And that is a benefit all of its own. The sense of accomplishment that came when I finished writing my first book, just the confidence it gave me, even though I will never publish that thing, it's garbage. And I know it's garbage. And I may have the tools to edit it now, but I don't know if I ever will, because it's like, do you really got to excavate that? I don't know. But the point was that I got it done, right?
Yes.
And having done it, I've matured to the point where I recognize that the rough draft is where you get those ideas out on the page and you figure out what your story is. That's why you don't publish a rough draft. Please, if you're listening to this, do not publish your rough draft. You will regret this later.
It's actually interesting because if you think about what the first draft is, it's like it's you're getting it out of you. It's I call it the flu book. It's like getting the flu out. It's like getting sick and going through the flu, and then you give yourself some time, not immediately.
Yeah.
Because you're still in that buzz place where it's like, oh my God, I wrote the book. But if you give yourself some time and then go back to it and read it, and if you read it out loud, if you can actually read it out loud, Brandy, and you can hear how it sounds, it's almost as if you're listening to a piece of theater.
Mm-hmm.
And if something is really bad, if something sucks, if something is fabulous, if you've hit the right chord, so that's something that I always think about is what does it sound like when I'm reading it? What does it sound like? Does it sound like I'm putting all my heart and soul into it? Does it sound like I'm not being honest? Does it sound like I'm skipping over something because I'm fearful that that's going to trigger somebody? That's the other thing too, is that we're so afraid now in the world that what we're writing is going to trigger somebody, or we're going to be canceled. Mm-hmm. Or if we write about another character, or there's so much right now that is preventing people from writing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear that has locked people up. And the reality is, okay, I'm going to offend people. I need to accept that. Actually, if I've done my job as a writer, I should offend somebody.
Yes, absolutely. Without a doubt, with you.
Writing is truth. At the core of it, it's truth about human relationships. And regardless of what we like to think, the truth about relationships hasn't changed since human beings were invented, because human beings have not changed that fundamental core. We still relate to one another the same way. It doesn't matter how much technology is involved. Exactly. Maybe when they get brain chips installed, that'll change. But for the moment, I can accurately say that human relationships and the factors that go into them have not changed since human beings have been around. So yes, it is truth when we write about relationships, if we are being honest in what we're writing. Now you can skip the truth, and some people do, but then you rob the heart of the book. You bankrupt the book, to me, or the whatever you're writing. If you're not willing to go into the truth, you're bankrupting it.
Absolutely. And
Um,
you're hoarding your own life.
mhm.
That's what you're doing. You're hoarding your own words, your own life, your own heart. Um, you know, I just remember Brooke Warner, who's the publisher of She Writes Press, and she was my editor at Seal Press. Um, she said, when you're reading a memoir, you know if someone is telling the truth. You know if someone is trying to get you to like them. It's very interesting. And now when I read something, I think, wow, that person really put their entire life into this. Or that person is not telling the truth. I mean, I had a friend who was writing a memoir about 12 years ago, and she sent me her first draft. And I read it and I thought, oh, this is a good story. This is good. I'm glad you're writing it. And then the second draft she sent was different. And I said to her, okay, now I need to know which draft is the real draft. I mean, which story, because the first one I think she wrote for the truth. And the second one she wrote so that people would like what she was writing. Does that make?
Oh no, absolutely, it makes sense.
And all of a sudden, it was a very unique thing to witness, because it was in that moment that I thought, okay, we as writers need to be super honest on that page. Don't fabricate. Don't make shit up. Don't lie about, the clouds were all foamy that day, and then it was a perfectly blue sky. Which was it? And it's very important that we write our truth.
Yeah.
Not the truth we think people want to hear.
No, but the way we experienced it. Because there's value in that human experience.
And what you said, we're all going to trigger somebody. We're all going to offend somebody. If we do the right job, really the right job, we're going to be offending or triggering somebody.
Yeah. I say that if you haven't gotten a 1-star review yet, it's probably because you haven't written anything that's really deep down true.
Yes.
You haven't done your homework. You haven't touched that chord. Because if you have touched that chord, you will find somebody who's deeply offended by that. You will find somebody who is not because what you wrote is untrue, or not because what you wrote is wrong, but because what you wrote isn't what they want to acknowledge. It's like you've touched a part of them that hurts, and it makes them angry. And so, that anger is going to come out in a negative review. And I'm fine with that. If you have been pissed off enough to leave a 1-star review, I have done my job as a writer.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
A lot of people get razzed by negative reviews, but my thing is, think about it. Out of 100 people who read your work, there are going to be 3 of them who comment, 2 of them if they're negative, and 1 of them that'll be positive. And the reason for that is we're generally passive. We don't really express ourselves much in this society. But when you hit the emotional into the spectrum, that's when you're going to get those reviews. Like if you've hit somebody really hard in a way that they weren't expecting and it hurts, they're going to leave that 1-star review. They're going to leave that 2-star review. And if you've hit somebody on the other end of the spectrum where it really hit home and it enlightened them, that's when you get that 5-star.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And as you're talking, it reminds me, so Gina Frangella, who's a brilliant, brilliant writer, she wrote, and I want to say Blow My House Down, or Blow the House Down, Blow My House Down. Let me get the correct, I need to get the,
yeah.
Because it's incredible. It really is. So just give me one moment.
Let's see.
Here it is. Blow Your House Down. Okay, so Blow Your House Down is a very, very powerful and unique memoir. And it's written in a way that is very unique. It's not a traditional memoir. It's not, it's not a traditional story. but it's really powerful.
Mm.
And she literally blew her entire life up. I mean, and just as you're reading it, you can feel everything from, just everything that she went through. But it isn't a traditional memoir. And when it was reviewed in the New York Times, it was given a very bad review because the reviewer is a very traditional memoirist.
Mm.
And so, but what ended up happening was because of the review in the New York Times, Brooke Warner, who knew both the writers, decided she needed to read the book because of the review in the New York Times. She read the book and was totally blown away by it. And her review is what went out and everyone started to buy the book. So the New York Times being a bad review worked in Gina's favor because it actually, people wanted to know, why is this a bad review? What did Gina write that would make another writer so offended? So it's that also which works in our favor. It's like, yes, it was not a good review, but boy, did it turn that book into an amazing, it really did. It literally blew the house down.
Yeah. Well, one of my reviews, the first 1-star review I got was on a book that I put out called How to Write an eBook in 40 Days or Less. And at the time, I hadn't been published. I hadn't edited a book. I didn't know anything about marketing. All I knew was how to write one, right? I'd written 6 of them. I figured I could walk somebody who was a beginner through the basics. That was all I was aiming for. And I really hadn't intended to publish it at all. It was going to be a white paper that I left on my website to collect email addresses. And then I had a friend who was starting a publishing company. He goes, "Hey, will you let me publish this?" And I was like, "Sure, go for it." Just like, whatever. And so it was getting 4 and 5-star reviews. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe I'm a better writer than I thought I was. All right, we can hang. So because of that book, I started up a writers group and I was helping other writers. And then that 1-star review came through and man, it was devastating for recovering perfectionist / narcissist. There's nothing worse than massive amounts of criticism. And the woman was a Vine reviewer, which if you know anything about Amazon Vine reviews, those are heavily weighted. So it was like, somebody tying bags of rocks to your book and watching it sink into the ocean. And I was like, wow, that's pretty hard.
That's the Virginia Woolf review.
And she basically said there was nothing new in the book that you couldn't find on the internet. And of course, at first, my first reaction was, "Hey, lady, this is a book for beginners. What do you want?" I mean, it's not like it's written for rocket science, okay? But so took that, and then I had learned a little bit about marketing, and I looked at the reviews and what did they find lacking in the book? What caused somebody to not leave a 5-star review? And there were a few things mentioned about, I wish I knew something about marketing, or I wish I knew something about this. And I'd learned a little more. So I stuck 5 chapters into reissued it. But then it still stuck with me. And about this time, a friend of mine introduced me to Randa Ingermanson's snowflake method. And I don't know if you know anything about that. It's a pretty cool little method of writing where you start with a single sentence summary of what the book's premise is going to be about. Just one. And you build from there, kind of like a snowflake gets built from that one grain of dust. And then the whole thing gets constructed around that. So I was playing around with his method and I realized, hey, he's only applying this to fiction. But if you look at this from a marketing angle, and marketing is a story, really, it's a story about, the hero of the story happens to be the customer. And the mentor of the story is, the person trying to sell you a product and, all that. So you kind of look at it from that angle, then you could apply it to nonfiction and even to memoir. And then I began tinkering with the other factors because he doesn't quite break it down enough. And I sort of started to catch on to what she was on about, which was that there was a whole lot of, yeah, you can do this. Believe me, you can do this. Here's a few things you should do. And maybe a couple of steps, but I didn't have a lot of step by step. And for a beginner, that means there's not a lot of ground between I'm going to do this and here's I'm done. So I started looking for a method that I could use to teach the writers I was working with how to get from point A to point B, because a lot of them were struggling, not with getting started, but with getting done.
Right.
So I wanted to
Very
find,
true.
so then I started tinkering with his system, putting together my own. And I was looking for a universal writing system that would work for fiction, nonfiction, or memoir, no matter what. It took me 6 years, but I did find it. Because every story starts with a problem. Towards the middle of the book, you find a solution, but just because you found the solution doesn't mean implementing the solution is going to be easy.
Or work in that moment.
Well, usually your first solution doesn't. You usually like try 2 or 3 before you actually hit the one that works. And then the rest of the book is about you implementing that solution to try and get the results. And the results are never what you expect them to be.
That's very
quite
true.
often they're phenomenally better than you could have anticipated.
Right.
Because you don't have all the variables to calculate into this equation.
No, that's very true.
You only know a limited portion of it. So then I started breaking that down. And of course it does. It works for anything. It works for memoir. It works for fiction, nonfiction, because it's all a human story. Every story is being written about, even when they're writing about aliens, let's be honest, we're writing about aliens from a human perspective. So
absolutely we are. It's absolutely, we're writing about aliens from a human perspective.
So that's all we've got to offer.
They're not really aliens.
Yeah. Well, we can ask ourselves questions like, what would it be like if we didn't have vision, right? Like if none of us could see, what would that experience be like? How much of our world would disappear for us? But by alternative, how much would appear that we aren't paying attention to? How much would we suddenly notice that we miss because we rely so much on our eyesight? Imagine an alien that comes from a planet where the light is very, very dim, so their eyesight is practically non-existent. And they come to this planet. They have senses tuned to things that we miss.
Without a doubt.
So we can write about aliens, but it's always going to be from a human perspective. So in the end, we're really writing our own story. It's just we're taking that perspective, that vantage point. But I think it's incredible that you guys are opening this writing school and giving people this opportunity to work with people from publishing and agents and Hollywood, and just opening those doors that people could spend a lifetime trying to open and usually can't.
And yes, it's remarkable. It really is. And it's really, there's so much joy in doing it. And I actually, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, if it hadn't been for 2 years of isolation and worrying and all kinds of, this would never have been born.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is also really extraordinary, that out of that darkness, this incredible light was born.
Well, math is an interesting thing in that math teaches us that, right? That for every big negative in life, there will be a correspondingly big positive. Absolutely. If you are willing to look for it, right? There is never a time when we are without positives. There will always be positives if we seek them. So it doesn't matter how big the negative is, there is a positive that goes with it.
There is. And the obstacle is as big as the reward. It's really true. I mean, it's that is the true sense of equality right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we just have to be able to see it and be able to own it and be able to recognize it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
And a lot of people don't. But yes, in this school, this incredible story summit is giving other people the opportunity to be seen, to be heard, to be witnessed, to be read. It's
a beautiful thing.
It's
That is such a beautiful thing.
It's glorious.
Now, if somebody wanted to go sign up for this school, where would they go?
They would go to www.storysummit.us.
And what would you want? We've got like 4 minutes here, and it's been a beautiful conversation.
I know, this has been enlightening. I
love it.
You're just this gorgeous woman that's filled with such wisdom. My God.
I tell you that every human being is made out of stardust, right? Yeah. We're all born out of stardust. That's the truth, right? And we yes, man was made from dust, but it's all stardust. And we're actually made to go back into the heavens. That's our ultimate goal is to come back into the heavens but stars don't get born until there's a lot of tremendous pressure and heat and just crushing forces put upon them that eventually cause them to ignite.
Yes.
So if you're going through things, it's for you, not against you. It's working to build you. You can handle it one of two ways. You can allow it to cause you to ignite and you'll burn bright for thousands of years, and you'll cause people who are wandering in darkness to be able to find you, and those seeking wisdom will look to you and be guided toward it. Or you can become the black hole. You can collapse in on yourselves, and you can choose to become that thing which sucks the light out of everybody else around you. The choice is yours.
That sounds like fun, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, there are some people that is the only joy they know, is sucking the life out of everybody else.
That is absolutely irrefutably true.
And I feel sorry for those people. I do.
I feel really sorry for them. My heart breaks for them.
And my heart does break for them, but that doesn't mean I want to be in their orbit, mind you. I don't want to be in their orbit.
I don't want to be in their orbit, but I want to know why and where they started to think.
It's usually, in my experience, that they just lose sight of hope.
Yes,
they lose sight of any reason for hope. They turn in on themselves and they collapse inward. And it's that inward, as one of the priests I used to love said, that navel gazing. The eternal position of navel gazing, where you don't see other people, you just see your own problems and your own pain. That leads you to become that black hole that sucks everything in.
Yeah. And that's really sad.
It is, but the good news is we always have that choice, right? We get to choose what we do with our traumas in life.
Yes, we do. We are pro-choice.
We get to choose whether we're going to use our traumas as an excuse to hurt others, or as an excuse to destroy them, or we can turn them into a story that helps other people process their own grief and their own trauma and find hope at the end of that. This concludes part 1 of my interview with Amy Ferris of Story Summit, a school for writers. I hope you'll join It's Truly Novel next week, Friday at 10 a.m. for the second part of this interview. Thank you for watching. If you found this video engaging and would like to see more like it, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you'd like to be notified when new releases come out, hit that bell icon.